And then the move then a 25-hour class. When the market is coming to an end, anything can happen. I don't know why. For some reason today, I'm also not in the mood. Or I should start and the mood will come.
Yes, please.
Yes, Lord.
He said we should go to slide number what? I thought I wrote regular somewhere. Cost rep, where have we reached?
265, sir.
265.
Yes, please.
Okay, so here we go. Today, 265, I have to get to 300. Hey, Rabbi. This is lecture what? Have a look, lecture 9, so I have 2 sessions more. So I need to do 35 slides. 35 slides. Okay, so let's try and do a recap of some of the things we talked about in our last meeting. Let me see those who don't talk in class. Magemisa. Magemisa. Class, can you hear me? Am I muted? No, I'm not muted.
So we can hear you. I believe we can hear you.
Michael Eminsa. Oh, just will be some question. And just what? We'll be some question. And I say more. Martin, so many?
Oh, sir, please. Michael says he's unable to unmute.
How is that possible? Martin, so many?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here, sir.
So, trying to recap what we did last week. Do you remember anything about project management? Anything at all you remember? Anything? In no particular order.
Yes, sir.
If I want you to read your notes, I would have asked you to read your notes and tell me something. Don't read your notes. Just tell me off head what you remember.
Okay. You said that project should be completed on time.
I said that project should be completed on time. That's what you don't know. You don't know that project should be completed on time. Okay, yes, very good. Yes. You have brought yourself. If we don't complete the project on time according to the agreed schedule, what happens?
It will increase the cost of the project.
Hey, so I didn't say.
Yes.
Okay, you have said something. At least you remember something.
Yeah.
Lenton, I know you do speak, but let me ask you. Lenton.
Sir, I can hear you.
Okay. What do you remember of that? Yeah, I think over in the book.
No, sir.
You don't remember anything? Yes.
Yeah. So last week we were talking about a project.
Yes.
And then I think you were saying that.
Yes.
How should I even put it?
Anyhow you want it. If that point is not coming, go to another point. We covered a lot. So what do you remember? Anything.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
you get ready. I'll go to Na Shoko. Na Shoko.
Hi.
Hiya.
Please, you said that projects usually, like a project is unique. So projects differ from, like each project differ. And that involve, they are made up of people from different departments come up together to form the team of a project or the team working on a project.
All right. I like that. Yeah. By the way, are you Ashoko?
No, please, I'm Day.
Nade.
Nade, yes.
I thought you were Nashoko.
No.
I like that word because it's do you know the Ga word for kiss? K-I-S-S. Do you know that?
K-I-S-S. No.
Oh, do we have any guy here? We say Ashokona. Ashokona.
Wow. Okay.
Please, the word is Ashro. Ashro.
Yeah, Ashokona.
No, it's Ashro. Yeah.
I'm sure it's your evening will know. Yes. One or winning.
Okay, that's just by the way. Ashona Abu. Who said that no suffering? Okay. So I went through with you, and then we said that in comparing, okay, what is the name for this diagram you see on your screen? It is called what?
A network diagram.
It's called a network diagram, and in fact, it's one of the questions that you meet. That what is the appropriate name for this? And I intentionally put project diagram there. Project diagram, and I know some people will choose it. Okay, I would say within a network diagram, there could be several paths. Agreed? You remember that?
Yes.
And in this network diagram, how many paths were we able to identify?
4.
4. We identified 4 paths. And we said that the path with the longest duration represents something. What do you remember about that? The path with the longest duration represents something.
I think critical activity.
The critical part.
The path with the longest duration represents the critical path.
So if you say critical activity is not correct.
It's the way you put it. And activities on the critical path are called critical activities. Another question you'll find in a multiple choice is project is made up of 2 activities. What are they? What are they?
Is it planning and
Planning.
controlling?
No, I said activities. Project is made up of two types of activities. These are, then you will type them in. This is a fill-in question. Every project is made up of two types of activities. You just mentioned one.
Yeah, the other one I forgot, so that's why I'm not saying anything.
Okay, so mention the one and maybe somebody.
Critical activity.
Critical activities. And the second one?
Scrum evaluation.
If an activity is not critical, what would be the name? We've come across
It could be, yeah.
non-critical. Non-critical. The project is made up of two types of activities: critical activities and non-critical activities. Okay, so what differentiates the critical activities from the non-critical activities?
Critical
You can mention
activities.
about.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Another critical activities are activities whose timeline cannot be delayed, because if it's any delay would lead to a delay in the entire project.
Okay, so that is the main thing. Can anybody say something else?
The critical activity must be completed before the other will continue. Before other critical activity will continue.
That is not a solid point, Martin. It's not a solid point. Yes, who wants to come in? How many? Quieting.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, I'm here.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so physical activities must be done on time.
Yes. What else?
I also think that particular attention needs to be paid to all the details.
What about non-critical activities?
Sorry?
What about non-critical activities?
So for non-critical activities, I think you can, even though the attention has to be paid to those ones as well, you can, be a little bit flexible when it comes to those ones.
What makes an activity a non-critical activity? From Leonie's answer, you can extract the answer for this question. What makes an activity a non-critical activity?
So one is not bounded by time.
Sorry?
One is not bounded by time.
No, every activity is bounded by time.
It can be delayed.
It can be delayed
Yeah.
without affecting the project completion time. As simple as that. It can be delayed to some extent without necessarily delaying the project completion time. But for critical activities, we cannot afford to delay on them, because any delay on a critical activity would affect the project completion time. Okay, so we did that. And these were the parts that we identified. That part, we had 4 parts in that diagram. And the first part is that if Leonie is here and Leonie's boyfriend is here, and Leonie wants to move from this point to where the boyfriend is, Leonie can decide to, maybe if the dad is standing here, Leonie can decide to go this way, move from this 1 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 7. Or she can decide to go this way, 1 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 7. She can also decide to go this way, 1 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7. Or she can decide to go this way, 1 to 4, 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 7. So these are the 4 routes or 4 paths that she can use from the start node, we call this a node, and a node is an activity. So from the start node, Leonie has 4 paths to follow to get to the finish node, the completion activity. Okay? And we have already pointed out that the path with the longest duration is our critical path. And the path with the longest duration also gives us the minimum time required to do something. What is that? The path with the longest duration represents the minimum time required to do something. What is that? Come on, class, talk to me. The path with the longest duration represents a minimum duration required to do something. What is that something?
The critical activities.
No, I said.
The project.
Please,
Who said it? Who said it?
to complete the project.
Not day.
Not day, time to complete the project.
Yes,
When you
please.
finish, text me your number and I'll send you credit for that answer.
Yes. please.
Okay, sir.
Hey.
So, Matthias, did you answer that question with 3 Swati? Please don't take it serious, I beg you. More. And then you go and when it comes to evaluation, the teacher has been insulting us. So the longest duration represents the minimum time required to complete the project. Minimum time required to complete the project. So the critical path represents the duration needed to complete a project. Okay. All right, let's move on. Did we do the forward pass and the backward pass?
No.
Did we do it?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No,
Thank you. Okay, so let's see the critical path. The critical path method. So each activity has the following times associated with it. We have the time to completion, which is represented by T, and that is the duration of each activity. The earliest start time, which is represented by ES, and that is how soon or the soonest or the earliest an activity can start. Then years of an activity, take note, years of the first activity in the network is always equal to 0. The years, the earliest start time of the first activity in a network, project network, which may also be referred to as the starting activity, is always equal to 0. That is something that you should always remember. The years for the first activity, the starting activity, is 0. Point well emphasized. The years for activities with predecessors. Sometimes you can have an activity with 2 or 3 predecessors. We are saying that we pick the maximum year for the immediate predecessor. We pick the maximum year of the immediate predecessor. Don't be confused. We'll work through an example for you to know what I'm saying. Then the earliest finish time, EF, represent the soonest or the earliest time an activity can be completed. Remember, yes, earliest time, how soon we can start an activity. That is yes. EF is how soon we can complete an activity. And this is computed as your years plus the T. Nade,
Yes.
what is the T for?
The time to complete the activity.
Which is also the same as
Duration of each activity.
Duration of each activity. Now, I think I'm going to jump from Leonie to you now. I didn't know your voice is sweet like that. So let me come on you, not day to day. Then we have the latest start time, which is represented by LS. And that is the latest time an activity can start. without delaying the critical path time. The latest time an activity can start without delaying the critical path time. And how do we compute that? The LS is equal to the LF minus our T. The latest start time is equal to our LF. What is the LF for? What's the full meaning of LF?
Latest finish time.
Latest finish time minus the duration of the activity. Now, the latest finish time, which is the LF, is the latest time an activity can be completed in order to maintain the critical path time. So LF is equal to the minimum LS of the immediate following activities. This and this, if you can see my cursor, this and that are the main issues that students normally have confusion with when it comes to drawing the network diagram. Point 3, in fact, you can decide to write point 3 down and write point 6 also down, or make a mark on them if you have printed the lecture slides with you, so that when we get there, you appreciate what this means. All the difficulties that students have with drawing the network diagram stems from this and this one. These are the issues. So yes, the critical path method, the node configuration. The node will normally have to be configured. You see, in this one, because we just want you to understand, we represent the node with a circle. But when you are required to produce this, the node should contain some information. In this simple example, there are 2 types of information here, which is the project number, and then the activity number and the activity duration. Activity number, activity duration, activity number, activity duration. So the top is the number, the bottom is the duration. But as a matter of fact, the node, which represents the activity, should contain 6 different types of information. And that is the reason why you will be required to represent the node with a rectangle, which is divided into 6 boxes. So the first box up here is the activity number. The activities may be numbered as A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Every activity will have a number, so you put the activity number here. Then the bottom, which is T, is the duration of the activity. Each activity will have a duration. So the duration of the activity, and that's what we have here. This is the activity number. This is the duration of the activity. The ES, so the tops are the E's and the bottoms are the L's. The ES here is the early start time. How soon can we start an activity? And early finish time. If we want to finish the activity as early as possible, how early can we finish that activity? That is the EF. So ES, EF. Nade, your hand is up.
Quick one. Please, what's the standard measurement of the time over here?
Which time?
As in, when we are for a project, do we measure it in days? Do we measure in months? Which one is usually?
It depends on the nature of the project thing. A project can take, I'm talking about practicality. So in practical terms, the company can say that, hey, we have a month, our CEO is coming to this branch. We have a month to execute this, get this project executed. So you costed the project team and you want to finish that project within a month. So in that case, the time measurement is going to be in days. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
So in 4 days, we must get this done. In 3 days, we must get that done. In 6 days, we must get this done. So that within the month, the project is executed. Sometimes the project can span over a year. Normally with construction projects. So we can define the measurement of time in terms of months.
Okay, so we define the 3 over ESP. So we define the measurement.
We define what?
So we have to define, like, whoever is working on
No,
the
no, no,
project
no, no,
has
no,
to-
no, no, no. So I've given you the practical scenario. In terms of the exams questions, I do that so that you don't tell me that why is he only teaching us for exams? No, I'm not just teaching you for exams. In terms of exams, we will give you the measurement of time, the unit of measurement in terms of the time.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. So the earliest start time is the years and then earliest finish time. We have already come across rule 1, and what we said the years of the
Earliest
now they have,
start or earliest finish time.
yeah, we said the years of the first activity is always equal to
0.
0. Some of these things you should remember. It's just like the church we all go to, the 10 commandments. So the years of the first activity, rule 1, is always equal to 0. And how do we compute the earliest finish time? We said it is the years plus something, plus what?
Time, the duration.
Plus the duration. So years plus t, this is our t over here. Years plus t will give us the earliest finish time. So this plus this will give you this. Now, normally in an exam, you get this information from the data you are given. So first 2 boxes, this and that, you don't need to compute. You don't compute them, but you compute the other 4 boxes. Okay? You compute the other 4 boxes. And we first have to compute the top 2 boxes all through the project's network, the network diagram. And then when we are doing that, we are filling the top 2 boxes. We call that forward pass. Forward pass. This is also one of the questions in the multiple choice questions. Forward pass. And then when we get to the end, we then start from the end and we begin to fill the bottom 2. So we fill from the last activity. Last activity. And then we fill from there and then we work backwards. Working backwards, we call that the backward pass. Take note, backward pass. Now, I won't bother you with how we compute the bottom 2 boxes, which is the latest start and then the latest finish. You see that in the next few slides. So note that in the network configuration, don't simply present something like this for us. We need you to fully configure the network activities with a rectangle representing each activity, and you showing us the full configuration of each activity with the ES, EF, LS, LF. Okay? So I have already mentioned the forward pass. I've also mentioned the backward pass. What I have not mentioned is the slack. Now the slack simply refers to the length of time an activity can be delayed without increasing the project completion time. The slack is the length of time. This is also in your multiple choice questions. The slack is the length of time an activity can be delayed without increasing the project completion time. Now, if I say this is also in your multiple choice questions, it doesn't mean that you'll find it. Some of you may not get that question. Remember, I have over 100 questions for the multiple choice. So Sakai will select it and give you what you deserve. So even if you write it down, you might not get it. Take note. Now, when the slack is equal to 0, we refer to that activity as a critical activity. Now, class, tell me, relative to the definition of what slack is, if you compute the slack and it's equal to 0, what does it mean? Using the definition here.
If we what, please, you went off for a second.
Please, if it's equal to 0, then that means it is a critical activity.
We
And
know that,
if-
but I said, try and explain that relative to the definition we have here. So if we compute,
It means that you cannot delay the project.
it means you cannot delay the project. Simple. It means that you cannot delay the project because slack is equal to 0. It means that there is no room for delay. Slack here is the length of time an activity can be delayed without increasing the project completion time. But if slack is equal to 0, then we can delay that activity by some days or hours, depending on what the measurement of time is. Remember the earlier question I gave you, that what are the two main types of activities we have in a network diagram? We have a critical activity, and then we have a non-critical activity. Again, this is also in your multiple choice. So if a slack is greater than 0, what is the appropriate name given to? If the slack of an activity is greater than 0, what is the appropriate name given to this activity? And it's a failing. I think with this, I'll give you multiple choice so that when you go through the options, you can easily identify it. Customer say. Okay, so let's do the forward pass. And I think we've already done that. For each activity, we compute the earliest start time, which is the ES, and then the earliest finish time. Then the ES time for the start activity is equal to 0. EF is equal to ES plus T. Now the ES time for any other activity is the longest of the EF times for all of its immediate predecessors. And then the EF time for the last activity is the project completion time. Please take note. One of the questions that we often ask students, what is the project completion time? What is the project completion time? So the EF time for the last activity is the project completion time. GF and LF of the last activity are the same. You are still coming across some of the rules. So rule 1, the ES time for the last activity is 0. Rule 2, the ES time for any other activities, the longest of the EF times for all of its immediate predecessors. And then rule 3, the ES time for the last activity is the project completion time. Rule 4, where there are more than one last activity, the project completion time is the longest of the EF times of these activities. So let's take a look. Class, we are going to do the forward pass. We are going to do the forward pass. So let's go ahead. Now,
yes, sir.
Where are we getting this 2 from?
The activity time, the activity number and the activity time, sorry.
Where are we getting it from? Class, if you haven't written this down, please write it down. You can also take a snapshot. If you are having this class on your computer, use your phone to take a snapshot so that when we get there, you take note. I'll give you 2 minutes to quickly copy it if you want to copy.
Thank you.
Are we done?
Almost.
Okay. Can we go on?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so here we go. So there's two boxes. I told you that you don't have to compute. Don't have to compute. We get them from the project information. Yes, we get them from the project information. And the top one is the activity number. The bottom one is the
time.
The time, activity duration. And we said for the very starting activity, the ES time is equal to
0.
0. And then we said the EF time, elephant February, EF, elephant February, or the earliest finish time is our ES plus our T. So 0 plus 3 will give us
3.
3. Now let's come to the second. First, you need to draw the network diagram. Yeah, you first need to draw the network diagram. So from what you have copied, let's go back to the network diagram. Oh, I didn't present the network diagram. Sorry, I didn't present the sequence of events. Oh dear, I should have done so. I should have done so that you get a better understanding of this. There is a table that is supposed to give you an idea as to the sequence of events. Okay. Maybe in our next question, I'll get the opportunity to explain that. But here, lay the foundation follows the first activity. Now, the earliest we can finish activity 1 is in 3 months. The time here is in months. It's in 3 months. So when can we start activity 2?
3 months.
Why 3 months?
Because, 2 months.
2.
The earliest we can finish activity 1 is 3 months.
3 months, yes.
When can we start activity 2?
2 months.
Why 2 months?
No, I think we can start it 3 months after the first one, but it will last for 2 months.
Yes. Those of you who are saying in 2 months, this activity follows activity 1, which means that we can only start activity 2 when activity 1 is completed. And if activity 1 is finishing in 3 months, how do you start activity 2 in 2 months? It's not possible. I mean, I could have just told you that the ES of the current activity is the GF of the immediate predecessor, but I don't want to use that. It will confuse you. You see, so we are finishing this in 3 months' time. It is only when we have finished this activity 1, that's when activity 2 can start. So the GF time here is the year's time for the following activity. That's why we have the 3 here. So the 3 comes here as the GS time. Once we have this box filled, we can then fill this box by
adding
adding 3 and 2.
By adding the duration to the year's time. So 2 plus 3 will give us 5. And normally I want to go according to the activity. So we are done with activity 2. The next one should be activity
3.
From our table, which in fact I forgot to bring, activity 3 also follows activity 1. When can we start activity 3? After we are done with activity 1 in 3 months' time. So that same 3 comes as the year's time for activity 3. How do we compute the EF time for activity 3? It's simply
add the ES.
Yes, 3 plus 1, and then we have 4. This is where the confusion is. Remember, I asked you to mark some 2 bullets, 2 points up there. If you look at this activity, this activity depends on activity 2. This is activity 5. Activity 5 depends on activity 2 and activity 3. But take note, the activity 3 finishes in 4 months time, and activity 2 finishes in 5 months time. So logically, when can we start activity 5?
After 4 months.
You are a master student too. You're a master student.
You just said that 2 and 3 would follow after 1, and then
listen. We are on activity 5. For us to get activity 5 started, we need to complete activity 2 and also complete activity 3. You can see an arrow moving from activity 2 to 5 and activity 3 to 5, which means that activity 5 has 2 predecessors, activity 2 and activity 3. For us to do this, we get activity 2 completed, activity 3 completed, then we can start this. But activity 3 finishes in 4 months. Activity 2 finishes in 5 months. When can we start activity 5?
5 months.
After 5 months.
After 5 months. Why can't we start activity 5 when activity 3 is completed in 4 months time?
By then activity 2 would still be ongoing.
Yes. By then activity 2 will still be in progress. We wouldn't have completed it by then. So even though we complete activity 3 in 4 months time, we still have to wait for this activity. And that is why the point says that when we are doing the forward pass, we pick the longest GF. So this activity has 2 predecessors. We look at the predecessor activities and we pick the one with the longest GF. So the 5 months is brought here as the GF time for activity 5. Class, is that point understood?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's go to activity 4. Activity 4 also depends on activity 2 and 3. So just like the same principle I've explained, we cannot start activity 4 in 4 months time because activity 4 in 4 months time, because at that point activity 2 will still be in progress. So we can only start when both activities have been completed, and both activities will be completed by month 5. So activity 4 can only start in 5 months time. So put 5 here, and then our EF is computed by adding the time to the 5. That gives us 8. Okay, this one is simple. This one has this activity 6 has how many predecessors?
1.
1, just activity 5. So here straight away, when can we start activity 6? When activity 5 has been completed. Activity 5 is going to be completed in how many months?
6 months. 6 months.
In 6 months time. So we can only start activity 6 when activity 5 has been completed in month 6. So the EF time here becomes the GS time for activity 6. How do we get our EF? By simply adding the T to the years, and that will give us 7. We come to activity 7. Activity 7 has how many predecessors?
2.
2. So activity 6 and activity 4. Which of the EFs are we going to use?
8.
Yes. I hope now you understand why we are using the 8.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Please.
We can't use the 7 because at that point in time, if we are activity 4 is not completed, so we cannot start it. Remember, year start means the earliest start time. How soon can we start activity? We can only start it when activity 4 is completed in month 8. And that's why we look at the years of the immediate predecessors and we pick the longest EF. So we pick 8 as a year's time for activity 7. How do we get our 9?
8 plus 1.
8
plus 1.
The years plus.
Yes. This is the last activity. Remember? And there are some rules we learned. Is it here? The GF time for the last activity is the project completion time. One rule. So if we come here, this is the last activity. And so the GF time for the last activity, which is 9, is the project completion time. So one of the questions that we tend to ask, how soon can this project be completed? All we are asking for is for you to compute this and tell us that the project, so in how many months is this project expected to be completed in?
9 months.
9 months. 9 months. That is the year of time of the last activity, 9 months. Now, what we have just done is a forward pass. So you look at the table that will be provided to first draw your network diagram. And then you put once you are drawing, you put the activity number and activity durations in the boxes. When you, after drawing, you come and do the forward pass. When you are done with the forward pass, we are now going to do the backward pass. Backward pass. So the first box to fill is this one. But again, here there is a rule. What is that rule? Nade, read this.
Yes. The EF time for the last activity is the project. EF and LF of the last activity are the same.
Take it again.
EF and LF of the last activity are the same.
Okay, so we come here. The GF and the LF of the last activity are
the same.
The same. So what figure do we put in this box?
9.
9. And now once we get that, we subtract 1 from the 9. When we are going backwards, we do subtraction. Remember when we are doing the forward pass, we do the addition. But when we are going backwards, we do subtraction. So if we have 9 here and we subtract 1 from the 9, what figure do we have here?
8.
8. Class, I wish you also draw this and then fill it as we go along so you understand what we are doing. If you simply watch what I'm doing, you might not get the hands-on practice approach. Okay, so we subtract 1 from here, from 9, and we'll get 8. Now the LS time of the current activity becomes the LF time for the predecessor activity. So what figure do we have here?
8.
So that 8 moves here. We'll write 8 here. Write 8 here. How do we get the figure here? How do we compute this?
8 minus 1. 8
minus
1.
8 minus 1. And that would be
7.
7. If we come here, what figure are we going to put here?
7.
Is it 7?
Yeah.
No. The activity that follows this is this activity. And we have 8 here. So that 8 becomes the LF time here. Okay?
Okay.
Yes.
So how do we compute here?
8
minus 3, 5.
8 minus 3. And that will be
5.
5. Great. Now we are on this one. What figure did we get here?
7.
7. So that's 7 because this activity depends on this. So the 7 here becomes the latest finish time for activity 5. So write 7 here. How do we compute the LS time?
7
minus 1, which is
6.
6. Which is 6. What did we get here?
8.
8.
5.
No,
8 minus 3, 5.
8 and 5. Yeah.
So 5 here and 6 here. 5 here, 6 here. Now look at this activity. This is where students often get confused. Similar to when we're doing the forward pass and where an activity has more than one predecessor and we pick the longest years. When we are doing the backward pass and an activity has more than one following activities, we pick the lowest of the LS. We don't pick the longest. Another rule. So this activity has how many following activities?
2.
2. Activity 4, activity 5. The LS here is 5. The LS here is
6.
6. Which of the two is the least or the lowest?
5.
We pick 5. We pick the minimum. But let me use the appropriate time. We pick the minimum LS. So the minimum among the two is 5. So we come and write the 5 here. To get this, we subtract 1 from the 5. And what do we have?
4.
4 here. Now, class, tell me how we are going to compute this. This one has how many following activities?
So we'll take the lowest, which is
The
5.
lowest, which is 5. So we put 5 here. 5 minus 2 is equal to
3.
3. Okay. If we pick activity 1, how many following activities? 2. So we have 2 LS. Among the two, which is the lowest?
3.
3. So we put 3 here. And we subtract 3 from 3. What do we have?
0.
0. Sometimes we can have more than one starting activity. So there could be an activity here, maybe activity something, could be an activity here. Where activity does not have a predecessor activity, then that activity is the starting activity. Sometimes we can also have more than one completing activity or finishing activity. So take note. So those of you who drew this and you are doing the filling in with me, let's go back and see. So this is our forward pass and backward pass completed. Check and see if your figures are the same with what we have here.
Yes, please.
Leonie, are they the same?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we are done with the forward pass, we are done with the backward pass, we have filled our boxes. Now we can tell how long it will take this project to be completed in 9 months' time. Okay. On the same boxes, let's compute the slack. But normally we want you to present the slack in a table. But before we do that, write S on each of the rectangles, on each of the nodes. In fact, the appropriate term is the node. On each of the nodes, write S is equal to. And the slack, what is the formula for computing the slack? LS minus ES or?
LF minus
EF.
Whichever one you want to use, the answer will be the same. Whether you subtract the ES from the LS or you subtract the EF from the LF, the answer will be the same. So on each of the nodes, write S is equal to, and then do the subtraction and put the answer there.
Okay.
Quickly do that and tell me what you get for each of them.
0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0.
Are we done?
Yes, please.
Atiamo, have you done it? Atiamo,
Please.
are you done?
Sir.
Francis Natham, are you done?
Okay.
I'm on it.
This one to how many minutes will it take you?
Mhm.
Nade, are you done?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Nade, what's the slack for activity 1?
0.
0. Because if you subtract 0 from 0, 0 from 0 it will be 0, or 3 from 3 it will be 0. So 0.
Okay.
What's the slack for activity 2?
0.
0. What's the slack for activity 3?
1.
1. What's the slack for activity 4? S is equal to
0.
0.
S is equal to 0.
What's the slack for activity 5?
1.
1. Because 6 minus 5 is 1. 7 minus 6 is 1. What's the slack
Yes.
for activity 6?
1.
1. S is equal to 1 because 7 minus 1 is 1, or 8 minus 7 is 1. What's the slack for activity 7?
0.
0 because 8 minus 8 is 0. 9 minus 9 is 0. Now, can you identify the critical activities from the non-critical activities?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, please.
So which are the critical activities? Don't mention the activity number. Using the slack, which are the critical activities?
The ones with 0.
The ones with 0. The ones with 0. Now, which activities have slack equal to 0?
1, 2, 4, and 7.
1, 2, 4, and 7. Those are the critical activities. And these are the activities that we cannot afford to delay on them, because any delay will lead to extension of the project completion time, which can have consequences in terms of cost and penalties. Okay? Up to this point, class, any question? Up to this point, class, any question?
No, please.
No,
question.
please.
So the slack, this is what we have already computed. Whether you subtract the ES from the LS or the GF, that's why we are saying or. So you can choose to do this or do that. Okay, let me see what we have here. Quickly write down this table. In fact, I'm going to solve this with you. You will do it. I also do my own here. Write down the table. So you have how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, if you have printed out the lecture notes, you don't need to. You just open to that page and then move along with that. With your A4 sheets, those of you who want to copy the table down, copy it, and then we move on.
Okay.
No, let me just give you, I think, let me work
This is
on
what we
it.
just did.
There's a little variation. There's a little variation with this. So
Yeah.
there's a little variation. And in your own time, do it. But let me work out one that has more than one starting activity and also has more than one finishing activity.
Okay.
And in fact, that is even an undergraduate question, undergraduate slide. So let me go. OMIS 3. So let's pick that one and then you work on that for me. Was it lecture 6? Let's see, lecture 6. No, it's lecture 7. No, it's not lecture 7. Could it be lecture 8? Yes, I got it. I got it. Lecture 8. So share lecture 8 with my students. Lecture 8. Hello, good morning. Nyamia dono. Nyamia dono mpachoze. Yes, research method setting. Okay. You're welcome. Bye. Okay. So class, here we go. Can you see my slide?
Yes, sir.
So the first question is that we want you to construct a network showing the interrelationship between the project activities. You see activity 1 and 2. You see that they don't have predecessors. What does that mean?
They are both starting activities.
They are both starting activities. They are both starting activities. So let's start the network diagram. Let's draw it. When we are done, we'll move on to the next. Well, we'll do the forward pass and backward pass. We have 5 minutes to complete this. For each node, I want you to present it the way I have taught you. Yes, like what we have here, like this. I want you to present it like this. So we have activity number, activity duration, ES, EF, LS, LF. Okay, let's go. On to activity 3. Activity 3, the predecessor is activity 1. Yeah. So I draw an arrow from activity 1 box node to activity 3. It's an arrow, it's not a line. In exams, we see people drawing lines. Lines do not show the sequence, the flow of activities. So always make sure these are arrows. So activity 3, what is the duration? Activity 3, the duration is 8 weeks. Then I go to activity 4. Activity 4, the predecessor is activity 1. So I run another arrow from activity 1 to activity 4. Activity 4. So activity 4, what's the duration for activity 4? It's 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Then I go to activity 5. Activity 5, what's the duration? What's the predecessor? The predecessor is activity 2. So this is my activity 2. So I draw an arrow from activity 2 to activity 5. So I write a 5 at the top. What's the duration for activity 5? It's 9 weeks. I write 9 there. Okay, so I'm done with activity 5. I go to activity 6. Activity 6, the predecessor is activity 3. So where is my activity 3? Okay, my activity 3 is here. So I run an arrow from activity 3 to activity 6. So activity 6. What's the duration for activity 6? It's 5. So I write 5 there. Then I go to activity 7. Activity 7, what's the predecessor? Activity 7, the predecessor is activity 3. So that means activity 3 is going to have 2 arrows running from it. So activity 7 also depends on activity 3. So that's my activity 7. What's the duration for activity 7? Activity 7 is 2 weeks. So I put 2 another 7. Then I go to activity 8. Activity 8, the predecessor activities are 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, okay. So I run an arrow from there. Then I run another arrow from activity 4, past activity 7. Then I run another arrow from activity 4, 5. 4, 5. Run another one from 5. Oh, 4, 5, 4, 5, and 6. And now will be activity 8. Activity 8 was the duration 6 weeks. Then I have activity 9. Activity 9 depends on activity 2. Where is my activity 2? It's here. So there will be another arrow from activity 2 to activity 9. So activity 9. What's the duration for activity 9? The duration for activity 9 is 5. Okay. Class, I am done with mine. Are you also done with yours?
It's a cool down.
But you could have followed the way I was talking to myself. Nande, are you done?
I'm almost done, please.
Atiamo?
Please, I'm on it.
This is undergraduate too. No, I'm not asking you to do the forward pass now. I mean, just draw it, and then we'll do the forward pass together. Are we done?
Yes,
Teacher,
please.
pressure. Teacher, pressure.
2
Yes.
minutes. So, mommy, 2 minutes.
Mate.
2, 3.
At least I'm happy that some of you are trying your hands. It makes me happy. But those who are lying on their bed and they are just watching, that's my worry.
Sir, please, are we supposed to do it with a forward pass in the backward?
Yes, if you can, start.
Okay, sir.
Just 24. Just 29. 6, 7.
There is a rule that I have not taught you. So I think you would make mistake. So hang on with the forward pass. Oh, yes, you can do the forward pass, but the backward pass, there is a rule that I need to teach you. You can all do the forward pass. So do the forward pass.
2 weeks, 2 weeks, 7, 29, 31, 8, 4, 5, 6, punch.
Do the forward pass, and then we do the backward pass together.
Four, 5, 6.
I'm taking a picture of my network diagram. Yeah, I'll put it on WhatsApp for you to have a look and compare it to what you have.
8. 8 is 6. 29, 29, 30, 35, 35. The last one is 9. 9 counts with 2. 9, 5, 35, 40. So I finished.
Great, great. Have a look on WhatsApp. If you're not using your phone for the class.
Okay. 1,
Yes.
3, 4.
You get something similar?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. So it tells me that you are following what we are doing. All right.
Oh,
So
this was
let's.
only one. I was doing other things.
You might not get exactly, but somebody may choose to. I chose to bring the activity 2 at the bottom of activity 1. Somebody else can decide to put activity 2 on top of activity 1. But as long as the relationships are displayed as we have, as you can see in this one, then you are okay to go. And remember that normally when we are doing showing the relationship, we tend to move from left to right. Sometimes you see people drawing it from top to down. That is not a good way. Did anybody get something totally different from what you are seeing on WhatsApp?
No, please.
Okay. All right, class, let's do the forward pass now. We are starting with activity 1. So what is the first rule that we need to remember?
The activity 1 is always 0.
The activity 1 is always 0.
Mm-hmm.
What about activity 1?
The ES of it.
So the ES of activity 1 is always 0. So we put 0 there. And then the EF is going to be 4 plus 0, which will be
4.
4. We move on to activity 3. I want us to do the ones that follow, the activities that follow activity 1. So let's do activity 3. So activity 3 can only start when we have completed activity 1. Activity 1 finishes in month 4. So the ES then becomes 4.
4.
And then our EF for activity 3 is going to be 4 plus 8, which is
12.
12. We come to activity 4. Activity 4 depends on activity 1. Can only start activity 4 when activity 1 is completed. Activity 1 finishes in month 4. So we can only start activity 4 when we have completed activity 1 in month 4. So the 4 there, the EF 4 becomes the ES 4.
Yeah.
For activity 4. The
Yes.
EF for activity 4 is going to be
7.
7.
7. 7. Let's move on to activity 6. Activity 6. Activity 6 depends on activity 3.
3.
Activity
Yes.
3 finishes in, it's not even months, it's in weeks. Activity 3
12.
finishes in 12 weeks. So we can only start activity 6 in week 12. So we'll write the 12 there. Yeah? What will be our year?
Yes.
17.
17.
17. Great.
Yeah.
Now we'll go to activity 7. Activity 7 also depends on activity 3, which finishes in week 12. So we can only start activity 7 in week 12. So write 12 in the ES box. What will be our EF?
14.
14.
14. 2 plus 12, 14. 14. Now let's come down to, we can't go to activity 8 because it depends on those that lies on activity 2. So let's start from activity 2. Activity 2, remember, is also a starting activity, correct?
Yes.
Because it doesn't have a predecessor. So what is the years?
0.
0. Our EF will be
7.
7 because it's 0 plus 7, so 7. Let's go to activity 5. Activity 5 depends on activity 2. When is activity 2 finishing? Activity 2 finishes
7.
week 7, so we can only start activity 5 in week 7. We write 7 into the years box. What would be our EF for activity 5?
16.
16, because the time duration is 9 plus the ES, which is 7. So that will be 16. Let's move on to activity 9. When can we start activity 9?
7 after
7 weeks.
In week 7. When we are completed with activity 2. So 7 into the years box. What will be our EF?
13.
7 plus
12.
So 12. You see, and I like the mistake you made. That's another thing that I tend to see students making. In the addition, not that he doesn't understand, but in the addition, there is a small mistake. And when you do that, it affects all of the subsequent additions. And you see, the student has spent time doing this and everything is wrong. So you need to be careful with your addition. Make sure you get it right. If you are not too sure about your mental capacity, use a calculator. Okay, Nadia, are we done?
Yes, please.
What is the?
We have to do the 8. Yeah.
We have to do the 8. So
yes,
8 has how many predecessor activities?
3.
3. The rule says that we should choose the maximum.
The long,
Which is 7.
The longest or the maximum EF time, isn't it?
Yes, please.
What are the EF times that we have there?
17, 7, and 16.
7 is not among, because 8 does not depend on activity 9. Check your diagram.
Depends on activity 4.
It's 4, it's 6, 4, and 5.
It depends on activity 6 too.
It depends on activity 6, activity
5, and 4.
Yes. You're right, there is 7 there. So 17, 7, and 16, correct?
Yes, please.
So which one do we pick?
17.
17. What would be then that would be the ES time for activity 8. So what would be the EF time for activity 8? 17 plus
23.
23. So in how many weeks do we expect this project to be completed?
23 weeks.
In 23 weeks. Okay, another question. How many completing activities or finishing activities do you see in this network diagram? A finishing activity doesn't have any activity following it.
3.
Oh, 1.
There are 3, sir. There are 3.
Listen, a finishing activity doesn't have any activity following it. So from the network diagram you have drawn, how many activities?
1, 2, 3.
4.
There are 3, sir.
4.
Yes.
No, it's 3.
I have
7,
managed to
8,
confuse you.
and 9. 7, 8, and 9. So 3.
7, 8, and 9. Yeah.
You are sure about that?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
sir.
I think 4.
Who is saying 4? Listen to the definition. A finishing activity doesn't have
3.
any activity following it.
3. Yeah.
So it's 3. And what are they?
7, 8, and 9.
7, 8, and 9. But the longest EF time, remember, as the rule says, the longest EF time is the completion time for the project. And that is why we are saying that this project can only be finished in 23 weeks. I hope that point is clear.
Yes.
Yes.
In the multiple choice question, I can give you this diagram and ask you that in how many weeks is this project expected to be executed? And I'll bring 23, I'll bring 14, and I'll bring 12. Interestingly, you see students choosing 14. Others will choose the 12. You see? Okay. So the first point is well understood.
So please question.
Go ahead.
From number 5 to number 8. If you choose 16, that's 7 plus 9. 7.
If you say from number 5 to number 8, I don't understand.
Okay, so the EF of 5, that's 16. That's 7 plus 9.
Yes, 16.
Yes, and then when you go to 8, it will be 16 plus 6, but you are saying 23. It's supposed to be 22.
17 plus 6.
17
No, we
plus
said we pick the EF of number 6, activity 6. What is the EF for your activity 6?
17. Oh, okay, I've seen it. My drawing.
Remember, even if some activities in the complex ones, you can have as many as 6 predecessor activities. So you just have to go through all the 6 and look for the maximum, the longest. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So class, we have 3 finishing activities. And remember another rule. We said the EF time of the last activity is the same as the, I think now I made it.
Yes. It's the same as the LF time.
The same as the LF time. So the EF time for activity 8 will be the same as the LF time for activity 8. So the 23, we bring it into the box below it, 23. Okay. Now, once we have that 23 written down, which is the longest, we give the same longest figure to the other finishing activities. This is why I wanted us to do this example. So our maximum GF time, or which is the same as the LF time for the last activity, which is 23 here, we give that 23 to the other finishing activities. So activity 7, what would be the LF time?
No, you mean 6?
7. 23.
Activity 7.
23.
23.
It will be, you put 23 under the 14. So you see that over there, we are not writing 14 at the bottom.
Wait, but what's the link between activity 7 and activity 8?
What's the link?
Yes, there's no link.
Great. There is no link, but we need to fill the LF time for activity 7. And because activity 7 is a finishing activity, we look at
okay.
We look at the longest LF and we give it to all the finishing activities.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yes.
So when we come to activity 9, you said there is no link between activity 8 and activity 9.
Yes.
But the LF time there is not going to be 12. It's going to be
23.
23.
Yes.
And class, remember, the simple explanation is that it is a finishing activity. So that we pick the longest finishing the LF time to fill all the finishing activities. Okay. Now that we've filled the LF time for the finishing activities, let's do our backward pass. Okay, so we start from activity 8. What would be the LS time for activity 8? 23 minus 6. And now give us 17. Right away, you can see that activity 8 is a critical activity. Can you see that?
Yes.
The top is 17, bottom is 17. The top is 23, bottom is 23. Straight away. So where the figures are the same, straight away you get the understanding that slack is obviously going to be 0. Okay, so let's come to activity 6. Activity 8 follows activity 6. So we pick the LS time there, which is 17, and put it under the 17 under activity 6. So 17 there. What would be the LS time for activity 6?
12.
12. Do you observe something there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's to be
What is
zero.
it?
The slack is 0, which means
It's a okay, slack is 0, which means it's a critical activity. Then we cannot do 3. Why can't you do 3?
because 3 is dependent
To
on,
do 7.
you have to do 7 to get it.
We have to do 7, activity 7 before we can do 3. So let's do activity 7. We have already put in our LF time, which is 23. What will be our LS time for activity 7?
21.
21. So if we look at activity 3, it has 2 following activities, 6 and 7. And the rule says that we should pick is it a maximum or the minimum?
Minimum.
Minimum, because we are doing backward pass. So pick the minimum. The minimum is
12.
12. So we'll put 12 under the LF box for activity 3. What will be our LS time for activity 3?
4.
4. Because it's 12 minus 8. So 4. Straight away, do you observe something?
Yes, to be 0.
Slack is going to be 0. Let's come to activity 4. Activity 8 follows activity 4, and the LS time for activity 8 is 17. So that becomes the LF time for activity 4. So put 17 there, correct? Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
So 17. Class, what would be the LS time for activity 4?
14.
14. How did you get a 14?
17
minus 3.
So 14. Great. Now I leave you to do activity 5, activity 9, and activity 2 for me, and as well as activity 1. So take me through. Which one are you doing first?
5.
Okay, let's do activity 5. Tell me and I write it in.
So for the number 5, I think because it's dependent on 8.
Yes.
You put 17 there.
We put 17 there. We put 17 into the LS box or the LF?
The down one, LF.
So 17. What goes into the LS box?
8, because 17 minus 9.
17 minus 9, and that gives us 8.
Yeah.
Remember, I've told you that be careful with this addition and subtraction, because once you get it wrong, it affects all that follows. So from activity 5, which one should we go to next?
9.
9. We already have the LF time there.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So what will be
23
the
minus
LS
5, 18.
18.
Yes.
We are done with activity 9. Let's come to activity 2.
Yes. So since it's dependent on activity 9 and 5, we pick the minimum.
Which is?
8.
Which is?
9.
8.
Hey, you are confused. Somebody is
9.
saying 9. Somebody
Leonie, where from 9?
Oh.
Leonie, where from 9?
17.
Okay, it's 8.
Yes, it's 8.
Somebody is also mentioning 17. Oh. Class, we are on activity 2. We want to fill in the box for the F. What goes into the LF box?
18.
18. 9.
8. Guys, we use the the minimum LS for the
backward.
The current backward LF. We have 8 and 18, right?
Yeah.
So we use 8 because that's the lowest.
Class,
Class,
are you clear?
Yes, I said it's 8.
It's 8 because activity 2 has 2 following activities. So we look at the LS time for the following activities, which are 8, and we look at the LS time 8 and 18, and we pick the minimum. Remember, we are doing backward pass. If we were to be doing forward pass, that's where we pick the longest or the maximum.
Yeah.
But when we are doing the backward pass, we pick the minimum. So the LS time for these two activities, 5 and 9 are 8 and 18. So the minimum is 8. You put 8 under the 7 for activity 2. How do we compute the LS time for activity 2?
8 minus 7.
Which is
1.
1. What are we left with? Activity
1.
Activity 1. What would be the LF time for activity 1? Remember, it has two following activities.
Before, because it's the same as 2.
Okay, it will be 4. It will be 4. So write 4 there. And what will be the LS time for activity 1? 0. 0. So I will take a picture of this and put it on WhatsApp for you. So those of you who have difficulty following us can cross-check when they do it at your own time. Okay. So that's it really. Any question on this? And normally when we ask you to calculate the slack, we want you to show it this way. Yeah, you have the activity number, the earliest start time, latest start time, the earliest finish time, latest finish time. And remember, so the box here will be the slack. You know how to compute it already, so I wouldn't bore you down with that. That's that we need this table. So it is the latest start time minus the earliest start time, or the latest finish time minus the earliest finish time. Whichever way, it should give you the same slack. And we identify those with zeros as our critical activities. Okay. So for this question, those are the two things that you need to do.
Yeah.
Clearly present your activity times in a table. So if you see something like that, that's what we want you to do, this one. Nade, any question?
Yes. Yes, I wanted.
Yes, come in. Yes, Nade, go ahead.
An interpretation of its activity. I don't understand it should be 0.
You don't understand why what should be 0?
We are saying that the earliest time the project should start is 0. For the start of every project, right? We see that the ES and the ES and the LS.
You mean this
always
one?
equal 0. Yes, please.
Okay. So we assume that that is the point. We have the project has a time limit. And at that point, we have not consumed any of the time limit for the project. So that is 0. We are starting with 0.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay. But alternatively, you can also see it as a rule that for the very first activity, starting point is 0.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other question, class? Okay, so no question. Atiamu, are you happy with everything?
Yes, please, I'm okay.
All right. Thank you very much. So let me stop sharing this undergraduate lecture slide and pick the postgraduate one. There is a visitor in my class. Let me give him 1 minute of attention and come back to you. Yes, boss. How can I help? Who are you? So you want 4 MSc. For those okay, so you send my email address to them.
No.
I have to write and upload.
Like I registered GRA with a company,
Uh.
so they are doing the application and everything for me. Like I would GRE with them. Yeah, so they are doing the application and everything.
So you need a letter to go give to that organization.
Yeah, for the application. So that's what they're
Then that organization should write to me. Because normally for all those, I do it for students every now and then, but I give them my email address. They put it when they are completing the forms, they put it. So you can give them my email address to put in there, and the university will send me an automatic. So in your own time, please try this one. 273, okay?
Okay, sir.
All right, I see some. Oh, the solution is not even there. Sorry. So this is the table that I showed you earlier on for you to compute the slack. I remember we will, in a project management question, we will always ask you to identify the critical path. So if we ask you to identify the critical paths, you need to be able to identify them like we've done here. I think in the example that we just worked, activity 1, activity 3, activity 6, activity 8 represent the critical path, correct? Can you hear me?
Yes, please. We can hear you.
Yes, okay. So let's do something on pets. This technique was developed to handle uncertainties in activity completion times. And we saw this earlier, that CPM treats time as deterministic, that we are 100% sure that an activity will be completed within a defined time. Very optimistic that an activity will be completed within a defined time. So CPM has just one time assignment, but PET treats time as probabilistic. And so it makes allowance for variations in the time estimates. And for PET, we have 3 time variations. 3 time variations. And that allows for uncertainties. So this technique was developed to handle uncertainties in activity completion times. The uncertain activity times are then treated as random variables with associated probability distributions. We need to obtain 3 time estimates for each activity. So for each activity, like in the example we just worked on, activity 1, we are going to have 3 different times, activity times. The first one is the optimistic. Optimistic is if we are 100% sure that everything will go right, nothing will happen, no risk whatsoever, and we have to complete this activity. What will be the possible time, the earliest time we can complete this activity? That is the optimistic time. Then we have the most likely time. The most likely time is the most probable time that the activity will be completed if the activity will be repeated several times. Then we have the pessimistic time. If everything went wrong, if the money for the project activity didn't come on time, if a worker's wife died and we had to pause, or a worker died and we had to pause the activity, all those delays, in the worst case scenario, what will be the time to complete that activity? Plus, up to this point, any question?
No, please.
It's just like you giving yourself those possible scores for your exams. For all the 5 courses you are doing this semester, I'm sure you have given yourself the possible outcomes. Oh, as for operations, the way I attend lectures, the way I understand the course, if my best will be A and my worst will be B+. Nadia, can you say that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So in that case, you have 2 possible outcomes. But here, when we are doing PETs, program evaluation and review technique, here we have 3 time estimates: the optimistic time, the most likely time, and the pessimistic time. So somebody will ask, so if you are doing the forward pass and the backward pass, which of these 3 time estimates are you going to use? In your opinion, which of these 3 should we use? Meshach.
The most probable.
The most probable one. Okay. Why not the optimistic one?
Sir, this life, if we are very optimistic, at times things doesn't go as we have planned. So I think the most probable one will be okay.
Then why don't we go for the pessimistic one?
The pessimistic, if you want to be pessimist almost all the time, you may not move forward.
That's a good one. So you want to maintain the middle, eh?
Yes, bro.
Okay. So now we have a formula that seems to take the average. We have a formula. So let's go. So the 3 time estimates are optimistic time, which is represented by A, the letter A, small a. This is the shortest possible time to complete the activity if everything went right. Most likely time, represented by the letter M. The activity time that would most likely occur if the activity were to be repeated many times. Then the pessimistic time, represented by the letter B. This is the longest possible time to complete the activity if everything went wrong. The 3 time estimates are all subjective estimates. Now we are talking about practicality. In practical terms, assuming this class is a project team, and we are looking for these times, as a team would ask, say I'm the project manager, we will look at the conditions around the activity 1. So, okay, so for this project, this activity, how soon can we complete it? If we have all the resources, we have all everything, people say, okay, this one, we need this amount of workers, we can complete it in 2 days. Is 2 days realistic? Everything we look at that. So they are subjective estimates, okay? Made by the project manager to the best of his or her knowledge. And we need to compute. For us to draw our network diagram, we need to compute the mean expected time. The mean expected time represented by T. And the mean expected time is A. Leonie, what is the A?
The A is optimistic time.
Plus 4M.
The most likely.
The 4 is a constant. Leonie, don't ask me where the 4 is coming from because I don't know myself. But it's a constant. What is the M, Leonie?
Most likely time.
Most likely time. Plus the B. What is the B?
Pessimistic time.
So you are making use of all the 3 time estimates divided by 6. Divided by 6. Yes, you divide everything by 6. So A plus 4M plus B, all divided by 6. Okay, then we also need to compute the variances.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there any reason why we use 6? Is there any particular reason?
So that's the formula.
Okay.
That's the formula. It's just like my point on the 4, that myself, I don't know why the 4 is there. I'll research and find out why the 4 is there and why the 6 is, but at the moment I don't have an answer. All I know is that for us to complete this thing, we need to compute the mean expected time. And to do that, the formula is A plus 4n plus B all divided by 6. Okay. But once again, I tell you that don't worry too much about the formula, because in an exams, if there is a question on project, we'll bring you the formula. Just that you need to be familiar with it, because if you're not familiar with it, even when we put it there, you will not see it. And then we also need to compute the variances, and it's equal to B minus A divided by 6, all squared. All squared. Okay, so determining the critical path, just like we did before, determining the critical path, we need to compute the mean expected time for every activity. Then we execute a forward pass and backward pass using the mean expected time. And we follow the same process as we have done before. Then we compute the slack for every activity, compute the slack for every activity. Then we determine the critical activities, just like we've done before. We know those with 0 slack means they are the critical activities. The set of these critical activities form the critical path, which I guess by now we all understand. So variability in project completion time. Variability in critical path activities can cause variation in the project completion time. So variation in non-critical path activities ordinarily has no effect on the project completion time, as I have made you to understand. So we let D, capital D, represent the total time required to complete the project. We let D represent the total time required to complete the project. And E of T as the sum of the times of the critical path activities. The sum of the times of the critical path activities. You can only determine this when you have drawn your network diagram. And you can only draw your network diagram, do the forward pass and backward pass when we have computed the mean expected time. Okay? Then you take the variances of the critical path. Here it's the sum of the variances of the critical path activities, which is giving us the square root of the standard deviation of the critical path squared. Then we assume that T, we represent T somewhere. Where is the T? We assume that T is normally distributed. Yes. We assume that T is normally distributed. Then the probability of meeting a specified project completion date, the D, can be computed as Z is equal to D minus the ET, all divided by the variances of the critical path. Yes, come in. The variances of the critical path. All right, thank you. Yes. My dogs. Class, 1 minute, please. I'll give it you. Who did? This one.
Sir, please, it has been started, so I'm okay.
So I don't need to allow you.
Sir, I wasn't the one recording.
I was cheerful. Okay.
Sir, I paused when you went on the break, so.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, today I'm having a lot of interruptions. Forgive me.
Thanks, Bismarck.
Are we done with it? Are we done with this? Cheerful, what is this? Theophilus, what is this? You can see my cursor. Okay, Nade, teach Theophilus and let's move on. Nade, what is this? Ah, am I muted? No, I'm
No,
not
sir,
muted.
you are not.
No, sir.
Leonie, what is this?
The optimistic time.
The optimistic time. Atiemo, what is this?
Most likely time.
Most likely time. And Francis, what is this? Francis Nathan.
Pessimistic time.
Okay. So if this is in weeks, you see, we say that PET has 3 time estimates: the optimistic time, the most likely time, and the pessimistic time. So if we are so optimistic, we can complete this work in 6 weeks. The most likely time is 8 weeks. And if everything went wrong, if there are delays, we are doing that in 10 weeks. Okay? So this is the table. I am sure now you have captured the table. These are the precedents we need to know to draw our precedents, our network diagram. In this case, how many starting activities do we have?
3.
3. So activity A, activity B, and activity C. So what do we need to do first? What do we need to do first?
So please, you calculate the mean expected time.
We calculate the mean expected time. What's the formula for calculating the mean expected time?
A plus 4
A
M
plus
B
4
over 6.
M plus B over 6.
Yes, so it's 6 plus 4 into bracket 8 plus 10, all divided by 10.
6.
All divided by 6, sorry, 6. And then we also need to calculate the variances at the same time. I will set is B minus
A.
That's B minus A divided by 6 whole squared. Okay, so that's how we do the computation. So first, we compute the expected time for each activity. Remember, we need that data before we can draw our network diagram, because network diagram, we need the time, project duration, project time, activity completion time in it. Remember here we said we use the expected time. Then what is the expected completion time for the project? Which figure are we looking for here? Which figure are we looking for here?
The finish time.
The finish time, which will be the Hey, my class, are you tired? I thought today the class has been lively. Do I sound boring?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Hey, from the plenty talkings we have done this morning, that's why we're trying to We said, what is the expected completion time for the project? What are we expected to do here? This will be the sum of the times for which activities?
Activity A, B.
So the critical part.
Critical part. The critical path activities, my lovely class. Okay. What is the probability that the new system will be ready by the 30th week? And this is where we need to compute the Z values and look for the Z values from a standard normal table, right? So we go. So these are the activities. These are the immediate predecessors. This is the mean expected time. Please use the formula and see whether the first one is correct. Check this one out and see if this is. Has somebody tried it?
Yes, sir.
Who is that? Is it Leonie?
Yes, sir.
Did you get 8?
Yes, I did just I was calculating the times first.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, this is it's in the lecture slide, so I wouldn't let you work it out, but you can try your hands and see if the figures are correct. And use the formula we give you for calculating the variances. Z is equal to B minus A divided by, is it 6? All squared.
B minus A over 6
all squared. Try this first one and see if it's going to be 0.44. It's correct, eh?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's pets, we need to show this table where we have computed our mean expected time and our variances. Okay. Or standard deviation. Okay. No, I won't let you draw it because it's already there. And so you can see that it is this expected time that we use to compute, to do our forward pass and backward pass. So we start, let's see. A is a starting activity, B is a starting activity, C is a starting activity. Let's see how they play out here. So A is a starting activity, B is a starting activity, C is a starting activity. In other words, any activity without a predecessor activity, as you can see here, there's no predecessors here. So any activity without a predecessor activity is a starting activity. Now activity time is 8. So let's go to the box. This is activity A, starting time is 8. And remember, because it's a first activity, the ES time is
0.
And our EF time is our ES plus the duration. So 0 plus 8 will give us 8. And it moves on and on and on up to this point. In this example, how many finishing activities do we have? Oh, please speak louder.
There are 2.
There are 2. Which activities are they?
J and K.
K and J.
J and K. Again, I have explained to you that when an activity does not have any activity following it, it is termed as a finishing activity. So this J doesn't have any activity following it. If you can see my cursor, it doesn't have any activity following it. So this is a finishing activity. That is also a finishing activity. But over here, we have a EF of 17. You remember the rules that the longest EF, or the longest path becomes the minimum path required to complete the project. the longest part. There are several parts in here. And out of them, this is the longest part, 25. 25 is the longest duration required, and that will be the minimum duration required to complete the project. And we said that the EF time for the last activity is always the same as the LF time for the last activity, so 25, 25. But that LF time is also used to represent the other finishing activities, as we saw in our earlier example. So here, even though the EF is 17, we don't have 17 here. We pick the longest, which is the 25. So you see 25 here, and then we work backwards, as you know. If we look at this activity, activity F has how many following activities? 2. So to get our LF, we look at the 2 LS. We have 9, we have 12. If we are doing backward pass, do we pick the maximum or we pick the minimum?
The minimum.
We pick the minimum. So I think that is well explained. You understand this already. I don't need to bother you with it. I don't need to bother you with it. Now look at this activity. Look at this activity, activity A. It has 2 following activities, activity H and activity I. So we look at the LS, 12 and 9. And we pick.
Yes.
Sorry?
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, so we pick the 9. If we look at,
I think it has 3.
3, eh? Yes. Yes. It has D, it has H, and it has I. So we look at the LF for the 3, LS for the 3, 16, 9, and 12. So we pick the minimum, 9. Okay. I want to find one that we are doing forward pass. That has 3. I think the only one I can see here
is H.
Let's see H. Yes, H. H depends on F. H depends on G, and H depends on A. And so here we are looking at the maximum GF. 7, 9, and 8. So we pick the maximum, which is 9 here. In the same way, if we come to K depends on H and depends on I. We are doing the forward pass. So we pick the maximum EF. Here we have 13 and we have 16. So we pick the maximum GF, 16. Class, up to this point, any question? No question. And I'm sure you are familiar with the computation of the slack. The S is equal to, which is on all of the nodes. See? So straight away, once you compute the slack under them, you straight away can identify your critical activities. So in this case, which are our critical activities?
B, E, and H and K. B, E, H and
K. So that is our critical activities. And that will represent B, E, H, K will be our
critical activities.
And it will constitute our critical path. So in how many days or in how many weeks are we expected to complete this project? It's in weeks rather. How many weeks?
25.
25 weeks. 25 weeks. Take note, because we have had instances where people are mentioning 17. Okay. So the critical path, this is our mean expected time. This are the variances. This is our ES, EF, LS, LF, and this is our slack. Remember, I've told you that the slack is simply your LS minus the ES, or your LF minus the EF, whichever one you choose to, and it will give you the same answers as we have here. So these are the slacks. Okay, those zeros are the critical activities. So B, E, H, and K. Is that what we got?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we come to the D. The D says, how long? What's the question? D, what is the expected completion time for the project? What is the expected completion time for the project? And we are saying that the project is expected to be completed in 25 weeks. 25 weeks. Do this for me. I just want to be sure. Six plus 3 is what?
9.
9. 9 plus 7 is what?
16.
16. 16 plus 9 is what?
25.
25. So one way to get the project completion time is for you to sum up the duration of the activities of the
critical path.
Of the critical path. You can see these are the ones with S equal to 0 are the critical activities, and that is our critical path. And this is the duration, activity duration. So 6 plus 3, which will give us 9. 9 plus 7, which will give us 16. 16 plus 9 will give us 25. Okay. We have computed this already in the previous table. We also computed this. We only added this for us to get our slack. Now, the last question, the E, that is where the difficulty is. What is the probability that the new system will be available, will be ready for use by week 30? By week 30. Here we go. This is where we need to do this computation. So, what is our D? If you remember, what is our D?
30.
The D is our 30. The D is our 30. The time that we want to make sure that the project is completed within 30. And what is our year of T?
25.
25. Yeah? And then the variances of the critical path. The variances of the critical path. So we go. So our D is 30 weeks. Our year of T is 25 weeks. Then the variances. In fact, you know our critical path already.
Yes, sir.
Yes. B, G, H, and K. And the variances for them B, so it's 1.00000. B, G, H, and K. So those variances, we sum them, we take the square root of it, and that will give us 2.6247. So we come back 30 minus 25 divided by the variances. The root of the variance is 2.600, and that gives us 1.9050, which is the same as 1.91. If we bring it to 2 decimal places. Ewache. Your hand is up.
Yes, sir, please. When you were constructing the table, we use the 2 decimal places. But when we were solving for the variance for CP, we use 4 decimal places. Please, any clarification so that.
Okay, that was just for simplification. But I advise you can keep it in the table. You can maintain up to 4 decimal places. Because if we use just the 2 decimal places in computing this, our final figure will be inflated.
Okay, sir.
Aha. So in the table, you can keep up to this one. Plus, this is what he's asking for. So you can keep this up to the 4 decimal places. So that when you go there, you just pick the figures from here. So you don't do double computation. It's fine.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So you compute and you have 1 point. That is the Z value. And we need to look for this Z value from a standard normal table. Yeah. You can Google a standard normal table from the internet if you have access. If you don't have access to the internet, how would you join my class? That's a silly thing to ask. You can check, download a standard normal table from the internet and look for the Z value for 1.91. And that will give you 0.4719. This is where the confusion is. And this is where oftentimes you see students making mistakes. Once you have computed this, you have looked for the probability that corresponds with this. And that probability is 0.417. We need to come here. You see, we said that the mean, the 25 weeks, our T is the 25 weeks. And we assume that the T, there's a message here. Let's go back. We assume that the T is normally distributed here. The T is normally distributed. And that is, so the T, and this is the normal distribution curve. So that's our 25 weeks, being in the middle. Let's say it's normally distributed. So what is the probability that X will be less or equal to 30 weeks? This is where the X occurs, 30 weeks. This is our mean, which is in the middle. X equal to 30 weeks. And that 30 weeks is where we have computed the Z4, and we've gotten a value of 0.4719. And you see, 4719 is to the right of the mean. This mean here, 25 weeks, the probability is 0.500000. So whatever you get here will be added to the mean, which is 0.50000. So here we got 0.47, 0.4719. So what is the probability that we will finish this work in 30 weeks? We'll add that probability of 0.4719 to the probability of the mean, which is the 0.50000. And that will bring us to the overall probability of 0.9719. 0.9719. as the probability that this work can be completed in less or equal to 30 weeks. Less or equal to 30 weeks. Now, let me ask you a question. Assuming that we did the computation and it fell somewhere here. It fell somewhere here, say 22 weeks. And that probability is 0. something. How are we going to determine the overall probability of getting the work done in 22 weeks?
Sir, please, we have to deduct that figure from 0.5.
Yes, yes. And then we get the overall probability that it will be completed within that, to be completed within that. So in this example, the Z value of 1.11 corresponds to a probability of 0.4719. Hence, the probability of completing the job in 30 weeks or less is 0.9719, which is 0.500. The 0.500 is the probability for the mean, because we said we assume that the T is normally distributed. So the T becomes, the probability for the T is 0.500 plus what we have computed to be 0.4719 to arrive at 0.9719. This is the probability of completing the work in 30 weeks or less. 30 weeks or less. Up to this point, any question? Now, what if the project complete? I'll finish in the next 5 minutes. What if the project completion time is unacceptable? This is where we need to do something we call crashing. This is where we need to do something we call crashing. So we'll review the original PEX through CPM network to see if the immediate predecessor relationships can be modified so that at least some of the critical path activities can be done simultaneously. We may also consider adding resources to critical path activities in an attempt to shorten the critical path activities. That's what we call crashing. Project crashing is a method for shortening the project duration by reducing the time of one or more of the critical activities to less than its normal activity time. See? So for example, the government of Ghana will say, oh, I have started this free SHS, and the first graduates are coming out. We don't want students, we want everybody to gain admission, or majority to gain admission into the universities. Universities, we are giving you money to expand your infrastructure. We award the contracts. And contractors say that, okay, we are finishing this work, this construction works in about a year. Then we realize that the students will come to school in less than a year. So some crashing has to be done to get the work done before the students arrive in school. So we identify the critical path activities in what these contractors are doing, and we add more resources to shorten the project completion time. Okay? So crash time is the shortest duration required to complete an activity other than the normal activity. Remember, so in this example, this is the normal time required to complete this activity. Crash time will be shorter than this. Will be shorter than this. So crash time is the shortest duration required to complete an activity other than the normal activity. So considering time and cost trade-offs, adding resources, more workers, overtime, etc., will generally increase project costs. Hence, the decision to reduce activity times. Remember, if we want to reduce activity time, we are going to add more resources. If the foundation, laying the foundation has to be completed in 1 week, and now we want to complete laying the foundation in 3 days, we may have to bring in additional workers, and that is more workers. And we'll pay them extra, we pay them more, so costs will go up. That's the point we are making here. So hence, the decision to reduce activity times must take into consideration or account the additional cost involved. The amount of time by which an activity can be shortened depends on the activity in question itself. We can't say all activities, all critical activities can be reduced by the same amount of time. For example, if it's the flooring of a story building and we want to shorten the activities, we all know that if you put the first floor, if you lay the concrete on the, I don't know the terminologies they use, lay the floor on the first floor, it has to stay on there for about 21 days. We have construction workers here. Hey, nobody has done pangbo before. Eh? We call that pangbo.
So I've done Conco before.
Pangbo makes you grow macho. Hey, I remember those days. Anyway, so the amount of time by which an activity can be shortened depends on the activity in question. And that's where I use the Pangbo example. You cannot lessen that thing by less than 21 days. You can't do that. Because if you do that, you risk facing some consequences. Then the cost of crashing an activity depends on the nature of the activity. Depends on the nature of the activity. I am almost done. So managers are usually interested in speeding up a project at the least additional cost. Please, I'm emphatic on this. Yes, even when we want to do crashing, even when we think that the project completion time is unacceptable and we want to reduce the time, bring it shorter. Project managers will want to do so at the least possible cost. Therefore, when choosing which activities to crash and by how much, we need to ensure the following. One, the amount of time by which an activity is crashed is, and in fact, is also permissible. Taken together, the shortened activity duration will enable us to finish the project by the due date. All that we are doing, all the activities that we are crashing, reducing the activity time by increasing our costs and all that will enable us to achieve that target of reducing the project completion time to the time required. And that the total cost of the crashing is also as small as possible. The total cost of the crashing is also as small as possible. Crashing activity times. Estimates of activity times for projects usually are made for some given level of resources. And usually this data will be given. Length of project can be reduced by injecting additional resources. What are the advantages of we doing a crashing, or in practicality, what will be the advantages from crashing? If a project team decides to crash, they may avoid late penalties. Your company may have taken a contract to do a project for another institution, another company. And maybe in your contract, there is a penalty clause. We need this work in 30 days. Failure to finish in 30 days, you will need to get a place for us to move our facility and stay in there until you complete it. And that is a penalty. So if you want to avoid those penalties, you may want to do crashing. But we also want to take advantage of monetary incentives for timely or early completion. Some projects will say, okay, so if you're able to do this, this is the bonus you get. So you take advantage of timely or early completion of the project. If we also do crashing, we may free resources to be used on other projects. A company may be handling multiple projects. So once we crash and we finish this project on time, the one at Amasaman on time, we can then decide to move our equipment, our staff, to the project at Aveime, the rice project at Aveime. We go there to go and finish that too. Reduces indirect cost of running the project, and this includes facilities plus equipment cost, plus supervision, plus labor, plus personnel costs. Okay. What if we don't want to use the option of crashing? What do? We may use additional funds if those funds are available. We may use more of efficient equipment, machines. We may also relax some of the specifications. Specifications that may be too demanding, we may relax them so we can finish them on time. Hence, crashing means increasing direct expenses and realizing savings on indirect project costs. What is the goal? The goal is for us to identify the activities that will reduce the sum of the indirect and direct project costs. Direct project costs. Information required by the project manager to enable crashing to be done. We need the regular time. We need the crashing time estimates for each activity. We need the regular cost. So if we are completing the project within the regular time, what is the estimated cost for completing the task or project activity within the regular time? If we are crashing it, what will be the time required to the time required to crash it, and what will be the crash cost? So we need this information. We also need the indirect project cost per day or the desired project completion time. We also need to know our critical path activities, because when we are crashing, we crash critical path activities. Class, can anybody tell me why we should crash the critical path activities and not the non-critical path activities?
So because if you crash the non-critical, it wouldn't have much effects on the project unless you crash the critical part, whereby when you delay it, it would affect the project. But when you speed it too, it will also affect the project.
Okay, so that's a nice startup. That someone wants to add to that. Who wants to improve that starting point? Why is it that when we are crashing, we should focus on critical path activities?
Said that the non-critical path activities are dependent on the critical path activities.
They are not. I disagree with you.
Hey.
Any other? Oh, today you've done well, Lou.
Yeah, so I'll try.
Try.
Personally, I think the critical, the critical part affects the time. It cannot, it affects the time duration, as it has a deadline that it's supposed to meet. But with the
you are going round. You are going round. I want you to move straight to the point. Yes. Any other person? Come on. What should we focus on it?
You focus on the critical part because you need to meet the deadline.
No.
Let me try.
Try, Leonie. Is it Nadia or Leonie?
Leonie.
Honey.
I think Leonie. Yes, sir. So I think we focus on the critical part because the critical part has the longest duration of it carries the longest duration of the project. So if we reduce that one, we automatically reducing the.
You are close, but not exact. I want the exact. Why should we focus on crashing critical path activities? Simple answer. Next.
To be able to meet the deadline.
No.
To finish work on time.
No. Francis.
Shorten the project duration.
No, crashing, that's what we mean. Crashing, that's what we mean. But the question is, why should we focus on critical path activities and not the non-critical path activities? Yes.
It's been budgeted.
It has been budgeted for. Hey.
So give us a clue. Give us a clue.
No. It's simple. Let me see those who have not spoken today. Amu, Dennis. Grandfather said, "A shark won't hit." You don't even mind me. Gifty, Akoso somewhere. Gifty.
Hello, sir.
Yes. Why should we, when we are crashing, why should we crash critical path activities and not the non-critical?
Okay, so is it because it's the minimum time to complete the project? Okay, sorry, I'm asking you. Okay, I'm saying it's because it's the minimum time to complete an activity, like.
Yes, the summation of the times, the summation of the activity times for the critical path activities gives us the project completion time. And therefore, if the project completion time is unacceptable, it just makes logical sense that we should focus on the critical path activities. It's so simple. When we sum up, so you remember earlier on, I went back with you, and now we sum up the time duration, the time, activity times for those critical path activities. And we got 25. So when we sum that up and we get the project completion time, and we want to crash the project, doesn't it make sense that we focus on critical activities? Eh, my sisters, my brothers, you are doing well, but that's why you didn't do it.
Sir, please, can you explain that one again? Because it seems the
Good afternoon, Dave. I'm in the office. Please come. Yeah. Yes. What did you say?
Sir, please, the rationale behind the crashing of the critical path activity. Sir, please, I didn't get your explanation well.
My explanation is that how do we determine the project completion time? We get to know the project completion time by identifying our critical activities and summing up the times and the duration of the activities that constitutes the critical path. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, please.
So if later on we decide that the project completion time is not acceptable and that we have to crash it, in other words, we have to reduce the time, which one would you focus on?
We have to focus on the time. We have to reduce it.
Reduce which time? The time for which one?
The critical path.
The critical path activity. So that's what I'm asking. That why should we focus the crashing on critical activities? Because the sum of the activity times for the critical activities gives us the minimum time required to complete the project. So if that minimum time is unacceptable, it makes logical sense that we should focus on the critical activities. Is it clear now?
Thank you, sir. It's clear now.
It is just like these exams, the coming exams. If you're so comfortable, if you're so much good in operations management, and you are not good in, can you mention one of your courses?
Financial management.
Financial management. And you want to do, overall, you want to do well in the exam. Which of them would you spend more time studying?
Financial management.
Why? Because you are not.
Because I might not be good.
Because you are not good in that. Okay, so that's the point. That's the point. Okay, I think I've taken a lot of your time. I will end here on slide. Is it 300? Yes. My target was to get to 300. So I have. So we do this, and I think slide 300, 299 is this. So with this information, we compute the following: the extra activity cost and then the crash cost. Sorry, the extra activity cost, which is equal to crash cost minus the regular cost. Then the allowable crash time per activity, which is the regular time minus the crash time. Then the extra activity per time period, which is equal to the extra activity cost divided by. Anyway, next week I will start from, maybe I'll start from here, 298. Nade, write 298 there for me, okay? Is Nade gone? Okay, Leonie, are you there?
Yes, sir.
So write this slide down for me, slide number down for me, 298.
All right.
Okay, so thank you so much for staying. Those of you who have had the patience to stay, you've done well. And today too, I have 23 students out of 39 students. The day of reckoning will come on you. But even if we are not even writing any exams, I think that operations management is so practical and it relates to everything we do around our everyday life that we can apply. You can see that I cite practical examples that relates to things we know, we are familiar with. But I still do understand why some of you don't attend class, don't attend lectures. I'll continue to hammer on that. So on that note, we come to the end of the session. Unless any of you has a question, then I'll address.